Aliyah Boston signs a shoe deal with Addidas, plus WNBA expansion once again comes to the forefront as roster cuts are happening around the WNBA. We're going to talk about that, plus the news going on with the Sky. Elizabeth Williams is going to be missing some time as she heads into concussion protocol, and who could step up in that time. We're going to talk about all that and more on today's Chicago Sky Central.
Welcome to Chicago Sky Central, and here's your host, Haize.
What's going on, Sky fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Sky Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Sky and WNBA related. We're going to go ahead and jump into the news around the WNBA first. But before we get into that, if you want to follow me, you can do so at CEO Haize, at CEO Haize. If you want to follow the show, you can do so at Chicago Sky Pod on every social media platform. But let's go jump into the content today. We're going to go around the WNBA first for news around the W. And first up, Aliyah Boston, the number one overall pick, has signed a deal with Addidas. Now, this adds her to Candace Parker, Kalia Copper, Chelsea Gray, and Nneka Ogwumike, all on the Addidas roster as well. And this is just capping off a hell of a year for Boston, who is the number one overall pick by the Indiana Fever in this upcoming draft, having a great collegiate career. Now is officially an Addidas athlete, and I couldn't be happier as the W continues to grow and as the athletes continue to get more shine that they deserve, and really considering kind of everything going on around women's sports in general right now. I'm loving seeing more players get that, and Aliyah Boston is going to be a baller at the next level. We all know that. You've seen it already if you've been able to, catch the highlights from the preseason games, since the WNBA is not airing the preseason this season, which brings its own issues. But, we've already talked about that. I'll probably talk about it again when the preseason is over. But shout out to Aliyah Boston for just being in the right position, and taking advantage and, getting a shoe deal that's much deserved to her level of talent. And so, I, for one, am happy for her, and we'll continue to see and monitor her career, and we'll be talking about it here. Now, moving on from that, WNBA expansion and the number of roster spots in the WNBA continues to be an issue, and it continues to be something that around this time of every season we talk about, because there's so many players that are still good that just don't end up on WNBA rosters because of the limited roster spots. Natasha Cloud's the most recent to speak out on it, her saying in a tweet, "We need more teams. These players deserve to be on a roster. It really kills me." This is after Avina Westbrook, Alicia Jenkins were waived by the Mystics roster on this past Sunday. And, it just highlights the fact of just the lack of roster spots around the WNBA. Even head coach James Wade, our head coach, said in a recent interview that he tries to delay roster cuts as long as he can, because he really does want to take a look at everyone. But, just highlighting again the lack of spots around the WNBA. And so, the fact that, the eye is always on expansion for the WNBA. We know it's coming on the horizon. Kathy Engelbert has talked about it a few times. The most recent update, which just came of May of this year, so just this month, said that, it's narrowed the list down to 20 teams. Now, while that sounds cool, that it was narrowed down from 100 cities, narrowed down to 20 potential cities from 100, this is kind of a backtrack in a way, because Engelbert, if you remember, in early this month, actually said that, in June of last year, actually said that there was just 10 to 12 cities that were on the short list for expansion of WNBA teams. So really kind of also like the non-clear path to what's going on with the WNBA and expansion. When you look at like women's soccer and that league growing, they already have 2 teams announced for expansion, with another team already for sure coming in either 2025 or 2026. And I know the expansion can't outgrow the league, right? It has to be according to what the league is the revenues that's generated and things like that. But we all know that we need, and the league deserves more teams. And on top of that, there are players on here that absolutely deserve to be added to teams. So it is what it is. It sucks that the maximum number of roster spots is 12. And that has to be cut down by May 19th, which we're just 9 days away from. It's unfortunate, man. And, in a league where we want to continue to see growth from the W, seeing new TV deals and hearing that the league revenue increased by how much it did last season, that's all good. And it's great to see that the league is growing. But we have so much talent that just can't find roster spots just by the nature of how the WNBA operates. You have 12 teams, 12 roster spots on each team, and it's the best of the best. And so, as the league continues to grow, and that expansion that seems like it's coming, that we've been talking about now for about a year or two. Let's hope. Seems like it's going to be two teams that are coming there. And Kathy Engelbert has said before that she would love to see the league eventually expand from 12 to 24, but it's going to take time to get there, right? You're not going to go from 12 to 24 immediately. We've seen teams have to go away at the WNBA level just because of the lack of spots there. So as it continues to grow, as we continue to develop, that is something to also look out for in the WNBA. Let me know down below. As the WNBA marches closer towards expansion, where are some cities that you hope the WNBA is going to expand to? But all right, enough going around the WNBA. Let's get into the Sky-specific topics for today. And first up, so the Sky play their final preseason game coming up on May 19th. And so that is next Saturday we play our final game. And so, I'm sorry, that's not May 19th. That's actually May 15th, I believe. But we play next Saturday against the Lynx in Toronto. The first game in Canada, so we get to see what that takes a look at, the first game in that city. And it's great that the Chicago Sky were picked for that game, but there are a lot of questions that need to be answered as far as the Chicago Sky roster as we march forward to that. Now, we start our season May 19th on the road against the Lynx and May 21st against the Mercury. That's how we open our season before our home opener May 26th against the Mystics. But we got tons of questions remaining to that. And one of the biggest questions is, after now, Elizabeth Williams has officially entered the concussion protocol, which means that she's going to have to stay in that for at least 2 weeks. James Wade's come out and said that she, after that hard fall, did get that diagnosis. She will be in the concussion protocol. So, we'll see how long she ends up staying in there and how long she is going to be prohibited. She'll be back by the season opener for sure. Probably going to miss our last preseason game, but we'll see. James Wade did say he's not too concerned about the long-term prognosis with her, that she's already progressing. She has some sensitivity to light and things like that, but overall, she's going to be back on the court. But this highlights the front court issue that we have right now with the Chicago Sky. And the bigger question is, who steps up? And so when you look at the Chicago Sky front court, of course, Isabel Harrison and Elizabeth Williams are going to be our starting front court. We know we got that locked down. But then we have questions around like Aliyah. What is going to be her role? She has a non-guaranteed deal, a contract this year with the Chicago Sky, meaning that they can get out of that contract prior to the season starting and owe nothing. If she's waived during the season, then she'll get the prorated amount of that. I don't necessarily see the Sky waiving Aliyah unless like there's a major injury, which is going to be, and they need to open up a roster spot, something like that. But she's dealing with a lower extremity injury that she came into Chicago dealing with. Right now, it seems like she's working with the training staff to clear that return. But it seems at least like that she's going to be playing for the Sky this season after some questions being around if she was going to play for the team this season. So it seems like she's going to be available. Wasn't really used a lot last season, but considering how thin our front court is, you do at least project for her to get some minutes here. For that. But then next up, Alana Smith, who also seems to be locked in, right? She does have an unprotected contract as well, meaning that we can get under that. But James Wade has already said Alana Smith will be on that final roster. And you really look at how well he coveted her in free agency, how highly he spoke about her on that initial press conference after she was signed. I don't really think there's any doubts if she's going to be on the final roster for the Chicago Sky. So that leaves the training camp invitees. And so that really leaves Morgan Bertsch, right? When you look at how Morgan Bertsch has performed in our first 2 preseason games, going 4 for 5 with 3 rebounds in that Friday against the Wings, and then 3 assists, 7 points, 3 assists, and 2 rebounds on Sunday against the Fever. She's played well. The fact that she was a former 29th overall pick as well in 2019 before being waived. And James Wade has spoke really glowingly about her as well. And so he said this: I follow her because we played against her overseas. She's just really active, bouncy long, makes good plays, and is deceptively quick. I think she has a future in the WNBA. She's given herself a shot here. So it seems like that front court depth that we do need is going to be filled. Isabel Harrison, Elizabeth Williams, Elena Smith is going to fill that. Aliyah, depending on what she gets healthy, but it seems like Morgan Bertsch has absolutely played herself into a roster spot on this roster going forward. Now we're going to take a look at in the final preseason game And James Wade, like I said earlier, has already said he kind of delays the roster cuts as long as he can. But we have to get this roster cut down. We have to know who's going to be on the final roster here sooner rather than later. And especially when you look at also Ruthie Hibbert being out for as long as she's going to be out as she recovers from having her son. Again, shout out to her on that. No negativity in that at all. And Morgan Bertsch has really, I think, worked herself into a role for this team. And I think she deserves it. And I think that the way that she's played in these first 2 preseason games, how efficient she's been overall as well, and just being able to carve out a role for herself, it makes sense to keep her on the roster long term. But let me know what you guys think on everything down below. Do you think that Morgan Bertsch has earned that roster spot and a spot actually in the rotation, not just on the roster, but in the rotation as we wait for people to come back from injury? Let me know what you guys think on all that down below. But that is it. Quick update before just kind of a midweek update around the WNBA and for the Chicago Sky. Like I said, trying to be the #1 spot for everything Chicago Sky related, giving you guys that consistent content and updates around the team. If there's anything you feel is missing from the content here, make sure you go ahead and let me know. I'll tell you guys how to get that in as well, on top of leaving comments if you're on the YouTube side. But make sure you're following the show at Chicago Sky Pod on every social media platform that we're on. I think it's just Twitter for right now. You can also send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, ChicagoSkyPod@gmail.com. And then Chicago Sky Central @gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. And that's it for me for today. Thank you for being the best part of Chicago Sky Central. And I'll see you guys the next time we go to Skytown. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.